Kicks 105.5 WKXH. Good morning, I'm JJ. It is Wednesday, September 28th. It is 7:48 and currently 51 degrees outside. Right now we have Mike Barrett from the Barrett Insurance Agency here in the studio with us. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning. Lovely rainy morning.
It is. My car needs washing anyway.
I was just say, throw some soap on it, you're done.
Right.
Problem solved.
Yep. And it's going to get rinsed.
Yeah, exactly. Good day for that.
So what are we talking about today?
So for good policies today, what I thought we would talk about would be, something topical or tropical. Let's talk about Hurricane Ian. All right. Hurricane Ian getting ready to pound the state of Florida. Who knows to what magnitude? I think last I checked, it was a Category 4 as it was getting ready to make landfall.
Yeah, that's what the forecast is.
Yeah, pretty scary. But let's go back to the other hurricane. What was it? Flora, or what? The one that hit Canada, hit the east coast of Canada. Hurricane season has been kind of lax this year, thankfully, but it's coming back with a bit of a resurgence. So I thought we'd talk about whether we're covered for hurricane, because we can get hit by hurricanes. In fact, we have. How are your belongings? How is your house going to be covered if a hurricane came through and we had the effects of one? Well, first and foremost, we live in an area not hurricane prone, which helps out. So that means we all have wind coverage on our homeowner policies. So the good news for us is that we have wind coverage, which a hurricane or even a tornado is a wind event. So it's not going to be a separate peril. It's going to be a wind peril. Thankfully, right? So how is it going to be handled? Well, it's going to be subject to your policy deductible. Now, there are some policies out there, cause for pause here, or pause for cause, whatever you want to call it. But there are some policies out there that do have a different deductible for wind events. Not all. In fact, it's very few, but they do exist. And it's important to know if you have it or not. But it's a percentage deductible. So rather than a flat deductible of $500 or $1,000, it's a percentage of 1% or 2%. That's 1 or 2% of the value of your property that's going to be yours as out-of-pocket deductible expense. So something to keep in mind there. But with a hurricane, there's so much more to it than just a wind event. It's going to be water, inundation of water, i.e. flooding. And here's the thing is, if a lot of people, when they think of flooding from a water source, whether it be a river or a stream or a pond or a lake. I could go on and on. That's usually what they associate with a flood event. Inundation of water can happen anywhere. Inundation of water can happen on Main Street in St. Johnsbury and cause flooding with no water source nearby. If we ever had an event where they're calling for 2 months worth of rain within 24 hours, it could be pretty devastating. So you would want to make sure that you have flood insurance, because there's going to be no other way. And we're talking, flood insurance having to be, impacting a certain amount of land or a number of neighbors for the National Flood Insurance Program. There are some other programs that have broader definition of flood, but certainly, that's why when we talk about flood insurance, most people get flood insurance when they're told by a bank to get it because they are near a water source and identified as being a high-risk flood zone. But truth be told, flood could happen anywhere. So let's jump over to the cars, because that's pretty important too, right? Hurricane comes through. How's your car going to be covered? Now, we just talked about if you don't have flood insurance for your home, then you don't have coverage for water inundation. For auto, comprehensive is going to cover if the vehicle is lost in a flood, right? Can't make this up. This is where I pause for everybody and go, I promise you, I am not just pulling all this weirdness out of my head and making things up. This is actually how it works. So a vehicle would be covered for comprehensive, and that is going to pretty much cover most of the things that would happen during a flood, right? So if you get wind damage, is going to come out of comprehensive. If wind brings down a tree onto your car, boom, comprehensive. If your garage is where your car is, or a structure is where your car is parked and that structure comes down, boom, comprehensive. And flood would be comprehensive as well. And interestingly enough, for the farmers out there, and we've seen this in years past, is that, again, flood is pretty limited, but flood is a common peril for livestock. Not for your equipment, But for well, no, I believe for your equipment. I should have double checked that before I started speaking. But flood would be covered for your livestock. So if you lost some cows or horses or llamas or what have you to flood waters, there would be coverage for the loss of those animals. So and the reason I bring this up is a lot of times we don't have people asking about hurricanes until one is kind of marked for our area as a possible hit or an impact. So I thought, you know what, a little preventative discussion this morning while Hurricane Ian is in the news, probably not a bad thing.
Right. So, so comprehensive, we talked about the vehicle thing. So just so I'm clear, say I own a home, and I have that wind coverage.
Sure.
But I don't have flood coverage.
Right.
And hurricane comes through, rips my roof off, and dumps all kinds of rain inside the house.
Yeah. So that's not going to be a flood event. That's a great question, by the way.
So my roof would be covered.
Your roof would be covered because the wind took it off.
But the water damage
then the damage
would not.
No, the water damage then would be because the peril of that loss was wind. So the peril associated or the peril that started that loss is what's going to be what's covered or not, right? So the water damage as a result of your roof coming off will be covered under that one claim.
Oh.
It's all associated. So
It's good to know.
yes. So flood, really the definition of flood is inundation of water that has, caused damage. That's it. But if the inundation of water is the result of another covered peril, then there's most likely going to be particular coverage for that.
So if say the hurricane, the wind or whatever, didn't do any damage to the roof, okay? So it just caused a flood, and you didn't have flood coverage.
That's still
It wouldn't cover it? Or it would
No, because
cover it?
nothing was damaged due to the wind. The event caused the flood, but nothing that you have was specifically caused by a peril. The peril of wind or a covered peril did not occur. It's only the flood that occurs, even though it's a wind event. If the wind didn't cause damage, but flooding came through because of the amount of rain with a hurricane, then that's going to be a flood event. So again, I don't make this up.
Okay.
I have to read it 5 times to go, really? That's what they say here? Okay. Yes. So that's how it works in a nutshell.
Well,
And I always say consult your policy and your agent for the specifics for you, because it's a general discussion that we have. But it's pretty, there's really only 2 policy forms out there for property. It's the ISO and AAIS forms, which I won't get into the details because it's kind of moot. But there are some subtle differences between the 2. But in the grand scheme of things, they're similar in the fact that how they handle flood and those types of perils. So.
And we got winter coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for that reminder.
All right. So this has been a problem for many, many years. Snow builds up on a roof and causes a collapse. What kind of insurance would cover that?
Yep. So that's going to be covered. You're going to want to make sure you have a Form 2 or a special form policy to cover that, but collapse would be covered due to weight of ice and snow on structures. Now, there are some policies, like farm policies, that you specifically have to request collapse structure or collapse coverage for a structure, and you're not always going to get it if the structure has any questionable integrity to it as to whether it can withstand or hold up to that weight. But for a regular home, yeah, you're going to have coverage for backup of snow and ice.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. Anything else we got?
And that's all I got. I'm tapped out.
All right.
I'm going home.
People want to reach out to you. They can call you at home.
Yeah, sure. Here's a call. You can give us a call at 748-5224. You can find us on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury, online, thebarrettagency.com, Google, Facebook, and YouTube. Just look for Barrett Insurance Agency.
Thanks, Mike, and we'll
you.
talk with you again next week.
Sounds great.
Stay dry out there.
I'll try. Quack, quack.
Mike Barrett from the Barrett Insurance Agency right here in St. Johnsbury on Kicks 105.5. Good morning. It's 7:57.